is to find 10 minutes of quiet. No phone, no TV, no kids, no nothing. Just find 10 minutes of quiet and just listen to yourself breathe. There's a difference between a dream chaser and a dream catcher.
Thanks all for tuning in to Dreamcatchers, where we make things happen. Dreamcatchers was formally launched to unlock the hidden potential in successful, self-motivated individuals who desire to take their life's work to the next level but need support to evolve. We are a collective group of professionals with various backgrounds that use our talents to assist those individuals in realizing their wildest dreams by providing education, inspiration, and direction. This podcast is where we share the lessons we've learned along the way to catching our dreams and give you some context around the how and the why to each approach to put you further ahead on the journey to catching your dream. Are you ready?
Here we are this morning on the Dream Catchers podcast, but it's a takeover episode. I'm actually not Jerome Myers. I'm Jeff Vin, a previous guest on the show, but I'm here with the Jerome Myers. Jerome, say hi.
What's up? What's up? What's up?
We're getting this energy up this morning, getting moving, but here at Dream Catchers podcast, we're telling the stories of people who have chased their dreams and escaped the matrix of mediocrity. You know, that lack of fulfillment in life, that dream dash, those adults struggling. We're here to inspire others to actually capture that dream, live it out, and find it. And all along the way, we find out what amazing stories people have lived. But today, the tables are turned. Jerome, you are in the wrong seat today, but it's the right seat today. We had a little role reversal, didn't we?
Yeah, man, this was cool. Jeff, it was so grateful you offered to come on and be the guest host for the Dream Catchers podcast so I could give the audience a little update of what's been going on for the past, I don't know, I probably haven't dropped the episode where I was the guest in 18 months or so.
Yeah, and last time I checked, you said you don't count, but we're well over 100 episodes in. So it'll be interesting to hear your story because, you know, we're talking about being in that matrix of mediocrity. We're talking about, you know, as children, we have this like innocence and this belief and all this stuff. But you went through the same pattern that many of us went through, including myself, where you chased a dream, you got the college degree, you got the MBA, you got the job. So tell us like that moment of, hey, I'm on the right track. I'm on the track society wanted. And then boom, you land in corporate, you land in that matrix. What did that look like for you? How long ago was that?
Yeah, at this point, it was about 10 years ago, man. Back in 2010, I started realizing that things weren't as I expected them to be. You know, we were in the middle of the recovery from the Great Recession. Fortunately, I wasn't impacted, but one of my mentors was. And I'd taken on a role where I moved from an engineering position to a position that didn't actually require a college degree as a leader. And it was there that I realized there's so much more to life, and just the stories that we're told as kids don't necessarily translate in the real world. And I hated that job, if I'm totally honest. And I was in that job for like 30 months and 5 hours and 32 minutes before I actually got out. I applied for like 100 jobs and got 10 interviews and didn't get a single job offer. And for me, that was deflating because I went from somebody who was a high potential, super high performer to somebody who couldn't get an entry level job at the company that I've been working for, I don't know, I guess it was 5 years at that point. And so I started asking a bunch of really hard
Sure.
questions.
Now take us through it before you went out and looked for these jobs, because it sounds like it was really bad. And then you're like, hey, I'm going to crack out of this thing. And it got worse because no one wanted you. What was that feeling like, that sinking feeling as year after year went by? Was it you wake up every day and the hours were long? Was it leadership suck? Like what were those things that many of us struggle with and feel during those 5 years?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that was a struggle was I couldn't do anything right anywhere except in my volunteer coaching job in high school. So I go to work, the work didn't really feel meaningful. It was super monotonous, super detail oriented. It didn't really feel like we were impacting anybody. And, you know, people in leadership made it out to be a pretty big deal. And looking back on it, I'm not sure which view I really agree with. We were responsible for keeping the power on for Central Virginia where I was working. And so if there was an outage, we're responsible for getting the people there, check out, see what happened, and then figure out the solution to get the thing fixed. Um, that was not really exciting for me. I wanted to be one to one. I wanted to be touching people in their daily lives and making an impact. I think the other thing that I really disliked about the situation was I had shift work. So I had to work at nights or second shift really. So 1 to 11. I had opportunities where I had to work on Sundays and Saturdays. And if a storm happened to come, I was working a 12-hour shift from 6 to 6, either night or day. And those things were not something that I really wanted to do, but it was part of the role and something that people wanted me to have exposure to as I ascended into higher leadership roles.
Yeah, and did that schedule and those hours like affect your ability to raise a family? I know you have kids or friends. Did it also kind of make that side of life lopsided as well, like outside of work?
Yeah, so my oldest was like 6 months when I was going through these changes, and she was pretty happy the majority of the time, but in the middle of the night when she woke up, she was sad. And say I got home at 11:30 and she woke up at 2, I might have slept for an hour and a half. And so it was just a really miserable time for me being an adult. And a lot of people don't actually talk about that. They always talk about how great it is to have, young kids and being able to love on them and dote on them. But there's some things that are really tough. And so I wasn't really handling all of that well. And so yeah, I mean, being on a different schedule and having those types of adjustments were really tough for me. And in hindsight, I probably shouldn't have done what I did. I probably should have just stayed on the path of staying technical from an engineering perspective and going into engineering management versus doing what I did for that what seemed to be a really long time, 2.5 years.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. If we have 24 hours in a day and we break it in thirds, 8 hours to sleep, 8 hours to play or do domestic activities or whatever, 8 hours at work, it's kind of important that we feel a certain way, or like our job or our profession to a certain degree, because as you're saying, we spend so much time there, right? It informs so much of our life. We're under that leadership and under that environment, under that people. Do you find that to be true?
Without question, I don't think most people end up doing this stuff in thirds, though. I think that might be utopian. And I guess it really just depends on what phase of life you're in. I'm a 5 to 6 hour a night sleeper, and that balance of time gets used to create things. You talk about play. Play is something that's pretty interesting, and how you spend your play time, I think, really determines where you end up going. If your playtime is on things that don't actually build you or build the things that you want to build, then you don't make progress. And so figuring out how to make those play things, those hobbies, contribution or contributive to your success, I think is extremely important.
Yeah, let's unpack that, because I wanted to talk about that hard time when you had to lay off a lot of people, but that's kind of a linear story. Yes, so play and having those bursts of creativity and the opportunity to create, like what does that look like in your life? Is that something that's always been there and you've done, or at some point have you like practiced that muscle of play or that awareness that you needed to play? And like tell me what that looks like in practicality for you. How do you do it? What do you go after? Like how would other people in the audience apply that to their life?
Yeah, I don't know if most people are going to really enjoy this piece of the conversation because it's uncomfortable, right? So Jeff, I wake up and I think you have a morning routine as well, but I spend 4, maybe 5 hours each day working on myself, meditation, reading, listening to something positive that's going to build me or educational. I work on a foreign language. And so, when you're talking about people spending 8 hours in play, 4, 5 hours of that is just really on self development for me every day. And a lot of people aren't willing to do that. There's some people who want to spend 30 minutes on themselves. It's all about consuming things that are entertaining. And for me, that just doesn't line up.
So if someone's in a place though where they're listening to this podcast, they're hungry, they're kind of burnt out, and they need to have that discovery time to find out their next move or to really look deep within and bring in that resignation letter. Like what would you say for someone to take a baby step? Because you're right, 4 hours is a big leap, but could someone tackle 30 minutes or an hour? Like what would you tell them?
Yeah, I think I tell them to start, right? Doing more than what you're doing is the game. And for instance, like I run 6 miles most mornings, right? And so if, but I didn't start out that way. There was 2 years where I walked. 6 miles because I thought running was out of the question, right? And when coronavirus kind of quarantined everybody, and had a buddy of mine call me, and he said he ran 4 miles, and never to tell him I can't do anything else. The next day I went and I knew I could run 4 miles because he had done it, right? And just kind of baby step your way into it and just make progress. And so it's uncomfortable when you're not used to hearing yourself and just being alone with your thoughts and silence. But if you can spend 5 to 10 minutes just in complete silence, no phone, no nothing, no stimulation, and then grow that a little bit over time, you'll begin to hear some things and be able to deconstruct some of the paradigms that you had that may have been given to you by somebody who wanted to control you. And for me, when you start having that awakening and that awareness, then you get super hungry and go to what Dave Ramsey calls this gazelle intensity, where it's like, okay, I know this thing happened. And now I'm kind of obsessed with figuring out what are the other things that are attached to that so that I can actually enjoy the life that I have. And so that's what I would say. Start with something super small. Start with like 10 minutes, right? Start with reading a page in a book, and then incrementally grow that after you get used to the rigor of it. And I think you said it best. It's a muscle, right? So everything builds on it. Everything builds on the other thing. And if you try to do too much too fast, you're likely to fail. And that failure will make you not want to do it anymore. And the whole goal is to have a bunch of small wins, knowing what your overall goal is. I call it the North Star. So you're moving towards the North Star. You want to just take baby steps towards that North Star.
That's beautiful. We talked about a couple of things here, like just even reading an inspiring book or this, that, and other. But you're specifically talking about a meditation practice. So, like, do you do it every day? And how long are you into now? Like, say, if you start at 10 minutes, like, unpack your actual practice using like the Headspace app, Calm, nothing, a timer. Like, walk us through like where you started with it and like where you're at now. Because I think this is key. We're in a noisy society, right? A lot of noise coming at us, a lot of watching this, reading this, listening to this, and that's the antithesis of it. So like you said, there's an extreme discomfort level, but the results are pretty fascinating. I'm over 1,000 sessions in on Headspace. I usually hit 10 minutes, but walk us through your meditation practice. Like, how did it start? Where are you at now? And what's it doing for you?
Yeah, so one of my mentors, a guy named Pankaj Sharma, exposed me to a lady named Sanaya Roman. And she has guided meditations. There's a collection of, I think it's 10 of them that I have access to. And I focus on two of them. One is on abundance, and another is on creating money. And so they're about 26 to 28 minutes long. And I get up and it's the first thing I do in the morning, still trying to take advantage of the alpha waves. And so sometime between 4 and 5 o'clock in the morning, I pop up and I go downstairs. I get in my chair. I cross my legs, as you would see some people or think about a monk doing. I put my hands in an appropriate position to receive. And I begin the meditation, and it's guided, and it takes you through visualization of specific instances. And then towards the end, it tells you that you can come back when you're ready. And so sometimes I stay in the state for a little while, and then other times I'm ready to move on to the next thing, just depending. And so there's a couple of things that you figure out. One, just because something stimulates you doesn't mean that you have to move. And so, say your face is itching, or say something's blowing on you, some cold air. You don't have to respond to it. You can just leave it there. It's okay until after you finish the practice. And that level of control is something that is extremely important when you get into a place where you're uncomfortable, or something or somebody's pushing on you to get something done. And that ability to stay still and be still is going to be the difference between you making a great choice and one that you made that isn't going to yield the results that you truly desire.
That's insane. So I'm liking this morning routine thing, because a lot of us, we have a lot of pain, or we're stuck at the job. So we go there all day, and then we have responsibilities to take care of. So we don't have that time to like reflect, to journal, to get it out. So this is really good. So you're waking up at 4:35, you're doing this meditation thing. And then you might stay in that state for a while. Where does your mind go there? Because we're going to unpack your like 4 to 5 hours of personal growth and self-development. So it starts at 4:35. It starts with meditation. you're 30 minutes into the day. What's happening next?
Yeah, so then from there, I move into Spanish because I really want to get that embedded. And so I do a few lessons on Duolingo, just going through the Spanish, understanding. Most of it's pretty elementary, but it'll be enough to get me by because we spend a ton of time in the Caribbean when we vacation. And so learning the language and being able to connect with those people in their tongue and understand what people are trying to say is like super important for me. From there, we'll move to reading. And so, some type of personal development book. Just finished up The One Thing and working on a book on networking and connection right now. And then from there, and that's, 30 minutes, 45 minutes, depending on if I found something that I really like in there and really enjoying. From there, we go to journaling. And I do it electronically. A lot of people like to write it out, but there's so much stuff that's repetitious for me that I like to have the electronic piece to it. And within that, I talk about just an overall summary of what happened the day before. My affirmation, I mention whether or not I talk to my kids and what we talked about. And then I go into my goals. And so, what are the things that I'm working on most? Include something, the things that have pending resolutions, kind of the big decisions, the big ambiguity or unknown outcomes, and just what any updates on those things or things that I need to do in order to move them to completion. And then I list all the things that I did the day before from a calendar standpoint. That's followed by what I plan to do today, what I'm grateful for, and the best thing that happened. And then the last thing on there is how much I weigh, because I was focused on losing weight earlier this year.
You said we were talking about fitness early, and you said you didn't know nothing, but apparently you can run 5 miles and you're aware that you need to lose weight.
I don't know a whole lot about the electrolytes and the chemistry of it all, but it's interesting. I was in a pretty bad car accident back in 2005, and so I broke both of my femurs, broke my kneecap, and and I tore some ligaments in my right knee, and I didn't get everything fixed. Right, the bones are okay, but all the ligaments and stuff aren't, and so I told myself that, hey, you don't want to be beating on your knees, your joints. You probably should just walk, and that'll be enough. And what I've learned over the past 6 to 8 months is if you're not getting your heart rate up high enough and into that peak intensity, then you're just missing out. And while my 2 hours of walking that I used to do was nice for clearing my headspace, it wasn't really doing a whole lot for my body. And so I had to grow the intensity of my exercise routine in order to actually get some real benefit and impact.
Yeah, that's amazing. I'm a long time runner, jogger, whatever. And of all the workouts I've done, surf, paddleboard, mountain bike, weights, all kind of cardio, when that heart rate gets up, right? So for me, that's like over 150 beats per minute, maybe 160, and particularly in jogging, life is amazing. It's like the best drugs ever, right? Those endorphins kick in. It's a steady ramp up. It's a steady ramp down. So that's funny you said that, because I've been at times in life too where I've just done resistance training or been kind of more low impact. And when I don't have that rush of blood a couple times a week, my life's actually quite different. Sounds like you may have experienced something similar.
Yeah, I learned a ton through this period of quarantine, and it's really encouraged me to go in more. I think a lot of people are looking for validation externally, and all the answers are within. You may not be able to unpack it and find them on your own, but you have all the answers to the challenges that are in your world. And it's just a matter of trusting your intuition and helping people quiet the noise, as we've talked about a little bit throughout this episode, so that you can actually hear the voice. What's up, tribe? It's your host, Jerome. I just want to let you know that we put together a free 15-point checklist for exiting the matrix. Jump on over to dreamshouldbereal.com in order to pick your free copy up. Let's get back to the show.
It's a perfect segue into what we are going to continue to talk about. So we talked about two things here. One is that if you're new to it, somewhat painful practice of meditation, right? Because it's the antithesis of what's going on our phones or the TVs. It's just that silence. But you have a pretty elaborate journaling practice. You know, you've probably heard of the morning pages, or we all know about diaries and things like that. I'm an avid journaler. I do 3, 4, 800 words a day. And my practice is more like a stream of conscious one where I'll just get it all out there. But how did you, uh, have you always journaled? Because your journaling is pretty elaborate. There's so much the audience can glean from that if they even just did one pocket of it. But just like you walked us through what you did with meditation, like how long ago did you start journaling? Like when did you really see the benefit? Did you skip a bunch of days? Like walk us through like the newbie perspective, because you're at a different place in journaling now. Take us on that journey. Where did it start? What were you doing for journaling?
Yeah, it started this year, honestly. I wasn't getting the results that I wanted. Business wasn't growing as fast as I wanted it to. I was kind of scattered in my approach to things. I didn't have a clear vision of what I was trying to achieve. All I knew was that I had come to a place where I resented the fact that I was really good at earning, and that a lot of times I felt like I was just a wallet and was responsible for paying for things, but not having any real value for the people who I was paying for things for. And so I was seeking significance. I wanted to be able to contribute to people's lives in a meaningful way. And so I spent all of my time trying to do that. And because I resented my ability to earn, a lot of my income was basically taken away. And so I needed to recalibrate my appreciation for my ability to earn and match that with the value that I was delivering to others. Because it doesn't matter what you charge a person who you're working with, as long as they're getting more value than what you're charging them for. And I think that was the thing that I probably struggled with most when I moved to entrepreneurship full time, in a place where I was doing service for others. I When I first started, after I left corporate America, I was fixing and flipping houses, right? And so it was pretty much black and white. This is what it costs to do the job. Here's how much I bought it for. Here's how much the market will pay for it. But when you start helping people with one-on-one services, the question is this worth that number? And because I wanted to help people so bad, I used to do myself a disservice. I would charge next to nothing just so that I could be a part of their world and try to add value to what they had going on. And that was a huge mistake, because if you're delivering tremendous value, then you should be rewarded for that. And I think a lot of it has to do with our lack of confidence and belief in ourselves, where we reduce fee or put fee at a place where we can't take care of ourselves in order to be a part of somebody else's dream.
That's interesting. So you were having success coaching and you wanted to coach, but you were deeply undervaluing yourself. You know, it was probably imbalanced, right? You were giving a lot more than maybe you were receiving in return. So that's kind of a tough pickle to get into, but you got out of it. What did you do? Did you just like stop taking on new people? Did you raise rates across the board? Like practically, how'd you move from that state to the better state you're in now?
Yeah, for the folks who I was already working with, and the one person that I've worked with the longest, I think he's probably been with me like 4 or 5, maybe even 6 years at this point. We just had a practical conversation, and he said, "Look, man, you're charging too little. Like, here's what's happened to my business since we started talking. I was in a different place early on, but my business is way different than it was now, and you need to be charging a different number." And he said, "I don't know where you're going to take the race, but it doesn't matter because of the amount of value that you're delivering to me." And so, him believing in me and having the proof of concept and the actual results, and attributing it that to my contribution to the business. Because there's a lot of people who will say, "Oh, yeah, well, I did all this on my own. Your contribution wasn't that big of a deal. You didn't really help me get to this place. I did this and you just happen to be riding along on my coattails." And there's other people like, "No, you made a real impact in my world and I want to reward you for that." And so him believing in me in that way allowed me to, I think I quadrupled my rates. And more people were willing to show up for that than they were the other thing. And mind you, I was spending I mean, just the amount of value that was being created increased dramatically because the people at the new rate, I could help them more because they were in a better position. They have more access to
Yeah.
resources.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's funny. You know that saying, damned if you do, damned if you don't? You may be damned if you do, but you certainly will be damned if you don't. So it's pretty courageous because a lot of us are stuck in jobs right now or situations, or you were in that coaching thing where you finally had enough pain where you reached the point where you know you needed to raise rates. But at that point, a lot of things can happen. You could do nothing. And if you do nothing, you're forever miserable because you have an awareness now that you really are undercharging, or you can be a baby about it and you can be like, oh, I'm just going to talk to these 3 clients because they're new and they're chilling. I know this guy or gal makes a lot of money. Or you can just carte blanche, like take that moment of insight and epiphany, take that inspiring conversation with that one client and just do that thing. So that's probably the hardest thing for all of us. How many of us right now, like in a relationship or something going on in work, just we know what we need to do and we need to do it full send. And full send doesn't mean radical. Full send just means like I'm not undervaluing myself coaching anymore, but full send means like I'm not just like stepping into it or the next one I'm going to charge like a little more. What would you say to someone like that? Because honestly, I kind of laugh right now. I don't know what it is in my life right now, but yeah, there's things where we're going to get to the better place. We have an awareness, but we just won't rip the freaking Band-Aid. How would you encourage someone? Because you did, dude. I don't know how quick you did it. Maybe you did like lollygag around and finally did it. But what would you say to people?
No, I mean, it was end of year, and I made a bunch of radical decisions. One was I changed fee. So, hey, you're on notice, January 1, rates changing. Two, if a person wasn't making over 100 grand, you had to be scheduled on my calendar. You couldn't just call if you weren't making over 100 grand. And that hurt some people's feelings. But the fact of the matter was, I didn't want to spend time because the 5 people you talk to the most are going to be the average of those folks' income. That's what you're going to make. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. That's what's always going to happen. And so if I wasn't making 100 grand a year, I was doing myself a disservice because I made way more than that. And I wanted to make that in the coaching business, not through all the real estate stuff that we were working on. And so I made those 2 choices immediately. He was like, no, I believe in you. I see the value and I believe that it's worth more than what you're charging. And so you should be more than willing to charge that because your top client, your longest running client believes that it's worth this. That was super exciting for me. And there was a lot of trepidation because like, where am I going to find these people from? But the reality of the situation is when you actually value yourself, you'll attract the right people to you. There's no question about it. And the people who don't value you, you don't really want them around anyway because they won't ever allow you to do all the things that you can do because you're not charging a rate where it actually makes sense.
Yeah, I just had a funny picture here. It's almost like life can be like the funny room, like all the funny mirrors, right? Because like, do I value myself? Do I want this, that, and the other? But with your practice of meditation and that stillness, you got somewhere. And then it sounds like in journaling, which you started hardcore in December of 2020. So it sounds like you started pretty hardcore early this year. Those were pretty radical things that kind of got your antennas up to get the information. Yes or no?
Without question. It's all about clarity, Jeff. Like, if you're not clear about what you want, you won't get it. And the story I tell about the accident that I got in is I didn't know where I was going. Like, I left looking for a barbershop, but I didn't know where the barbershop was. And I was just wandering around.
In your
And
car, the car
yeah,
accident?
yeah, yeah. And so, and on the way back, I got smashed. And had I known where I was going, I can't tell you that that wouldn't happen, but I know that I was in the place that I was in because I had no idea where I was going. And I promised myself I'd never be in a place where I didn't know where I was going anymore. And so getting clear is the biggest gift that any person can give themselves.
Yeah, and so that let's unpack that because that's a big question. What is your main impetus right now? Do you have like a mission statement for your life or like one main thing you're after? What is that in your life right now? Like looking now and ahead, where are you at with things and where are you at with that clarity? What are you after?
Yeah, the goal is to free 100 people from work they're not passionate about. The other piece of that thousand is we want to buy $1,000 portfolio that creates passive income for people to replace their active work. But the goal is to get 100 people out of work they're not passionate about, because I believe that if those 100 people are off doing the thing that they were put on a place on the earth to do, that the world becomes a much better place, right? If you and I are doing the things that are in our genius zone, we can impact thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of people, because we're doing the thing that we were uniquely put here to do. And I don't think most people really understand that somebody's waiting for them to do the thing so that they can do their thing. And it's this chain reaction that because you're deciding that you're not going to do your thing, you're just going to do the status quo, that you're keeping all these other miracles from happening.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the trap. And that's the whole escaping the matrix thing. Love it. All right. So we're going to switch gears now and do some like popcorn style questions, but they're not short answer. They're just like, we're just going to bounce, bounce, bounce. So this is a big question, but and think about it for a second. But what are you most proud of in your life?
My kids,
Your
without
kids.
questions. Yeah.
Yeah. How so?
Oh man. So the older one, Kaya, she is just one of the most thoughtful people in the world. So we're at Disney World. We hop on the bus. It's the end of the day, and she sees two seats, and it's the three of us. It's me, her sister, and her. And instead of plopping down in one of the two open seats, she looks around and see if she can find three together. And it was in that moment, because her sister was asleep and I was carrying her. It was in that moment that I realized, like, she doesn't just care about her; she cares about everybody, and she wants to make sure everybody has what they need. And I don't know many people. I think she was like 8 or 9 at the time. I don't know many people who are adults that think the way, let alone an 8 or 9 year old kid. Um, Leah is the one who's willing to ask the uncomfortable questions, and I love that because she can sense when people are uneasy, and she brings them out of it, right? She makes it okay to have a conversation, and that allows people to become closer because they're not hiding behind this facade. And I think those two skills are going to serve them well as they matriculate through all the different lessons they're going to learn as they lead long, healthy, and productive lives.
That's beautiful. So rewarding. Many of us have the experience of having kids, and we're all kids, right? If you're listening to this, you are that to someone where they may have gone on. And in your work life, Jerome, what are you most proud of, like in your personal life? So you created the babies, but work wise, like career wise, accomplishment wise, like what thing are you most proud of? And maybe it was way back in high school you did some lemonade stand, or maybe it's like what you did this year, like you took the red pill. What is it? Maybe it is that actually. It's on your shirt.
Yeah, yeah. My man Brian Briscoe talks about Jerome as peddling red pills. And that part is super exciting for me. I think the thing I'm most proud about is going on to different platforms and sharing this message of, you're not weird because you're asking the questions you're asking about what's wrong with the system. You're not weird or confused because you don't want to continue to go down that path that you were given or asked to do when you were a kid. That freedom, and then telling people, hey, your dreams should be real on the backside of that, is not something that I could have done in my past life being, in corporate America.
Yeah.
It was all about returning value to shareholders. For me, I want people to be free to do the things that they're most passionate about. And if I can tell them that and inspire them and live a life that inspires them to go off and do those things, then I think I'm actually walking in my purpose.
Wow, that's an amazing feeling. So that's something you're most proud of. What's been like the hardest thing, the hardest lesson you've ever learned in life, the one that really stuck? What was it?
Ooh. So this one it cuts deep. But I think there are people in the world who will take from you and have no desire to give you anything in return. And that was the most sobering lesson that I had to learn. It and it turned me into a person who was counting what was happening in transactions. Oh, I did this for you. Are you going to do something in return for me? Instead of just being the person that I was taught to be as a child, which just give out of your abundance. It doesn't matter if the person can do or will do for you, just continue to give. And the reason why I had to make the shift is because back in 2010, I ended up empty, right? I didn't have a mask for myself. I had masks for everybody else. And it had a negative impact on me in my world. And so I had to get healthy. I had to start investing in myself. And then I had to recalibrate the people that were in my inner five to make sure that they were folks who were as interested in investing in me as I was investing in them. I believe mutual benefit is the only relationship that you should have.
Yeah, heavy stuff. We're bringing the plane to the runway now in the next few minutes. So now we're getting super popcorny. So these could be more short answer. Thank you for the vulnerability on that. So if someone listens to this podcast, right, and they're in some kind of like lot of thought and confusion, like what's the one thing you'd recommend they do? Like say the weekend's coming up this weekend. Should they journal? Should they do this, that, and the other? If someone's take a baby step and they're all a mess, what would you say they do? They can meditate, work out, journal, all the above, but they can only do one thing.
One thing is to find 10 minutes of quiet. No phone, no TV, no kids, no nothing. Just find 10 minutes of quiet and just listen to yourself breathe.
Yeah, that sounds terrifying. It could be. The funny mirrors, right? Okay, if someone was to crack a book open, and we're sticking along this inspirational path, right? Taking the red pill. So yeah, they're going to get 10 minutes of quiet. If they were to crack a book open, what book are you going to have in their hands?
So we put out a book last May called Your Dreams Should Be Real. I want everybody to read that book.
Your dreams should be real. That's cool. And then what's one thing in life, and it could be big or small, that you really want, but you don't have right now?
Oh, it's big. I want a Lamborghini Aventador.
Lamborghini Aventador, whatever that is. I think it's a car. What's the Lamborghini's motto? Is it like a snake or something? What is it?
It's a bull.
It's a bull. Yeah, godly cars. Okay, I'll reserve my own commentary. And then how can people engage with you? Like, so you said read the book. You gave. Can we get the meditations and the notes on this podcast by that Sanaya Roman lady?
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah, so you got the meditation. But how should people engage with you? Like, what's the thing that you got going that might give them a lot of value?
Yeah, I think the best thing that we can do is connect on LinkedIn. I'm Jerome Myers on LinkedIn, Greensboro, North Carolina. And I post content there every single day. And I engage with folks. I'm on social media to be social. And so I love to have people start following us on the journey.
I love that. On social media to be social. What question have I not asked you that I should ask here as the plane lands on the runway?
I think we talked about it kind of on the cuff, but not deep enough. And I think it is, what's the big takeaway? What matters? Why does it matter? And if you don't listen to anything else, hear this. Your dream should be real, right? You were given that dream for a reason, and you're the only person that can actually manifest it. And so if you're not on a path and actively trying to achieve that, then you're doing yourself and the world a disservice. And so I'm here to challenge you to do what it takes in order to manifest that as a reality.
Jerome, it's been a pleasure. We'll see you on the next Dream Catchers podcast. Join us. Thanks for sharing your value. Thanks for turning your tables.
Thank you for joining the tribe today. We would love to hear from you. Please don't forget to rate, like, and share. Perhaps someone you know could benefit from what we've discussed. Until the next time, remember that your dreams should be real.